Oh, well, I got a gal that's sweet.
Have you ever wondered why some artists soar to the top of country music only to fade just when it seems they've found their groove? Ricky Skaggs is one such figure, and his story has fascinated fans for decades. At one point, he was celebrated as the vibrant link between modern audiences and the rustic hills of bluegrass. Then he stepped away from the center of the mainstream. Did the labels push him out for refusing to chase radio-friendly trends? Or did he quietly choose a path that preserved the soul of the music he loved? His journey carries the marks of success, conflict, faith, and a passionate return to the roots he first discovered as a child in Kentucky. He was born on July 18, 1954 in Cordell, Kentucky, a place where fiddles, banjos, and guitars often rang out at church socials and living rooms alike. His parents, Hobart and Dorothy, saw early signs of a gifted ear. He could pick out melodies almost instinctively by age 4. Old-time music filled his world, and the mandolin quickly became his favorite instrument. Family lore suggests he could replicate entire tunes after hearing them once, which soon led to a fateful moment. Bill Monroe, the father of bluegrass, came through the area, and locals insisted that the 6-year-old phenom join him on stage. The crowd held its breath, expecting a novelty act. Instead, they got a tiny child who matched Monroe's notes with startling clarity. That performance lit a fire in Ricky's young mind, convincing him that music would be his life's pursuit. By 15, he was playing with Ralph Stanley's Clinch Mountain Boys, a daunting step for someone barely old enough to drive. Late-night gigs, hours spent in cramped vans, and an unwavering focus on stagecraft toughened him up fast. Stanley's haunting mountain vocals and steadfast dedication to tradition influenced Ricky's approach. Night after night, he refined his playing and learned how to channel emotion into every note. While friends back home were attending high school dances, he was learning from seasoned bluegrass veterans. That immersion shaped him into a young professional who played with the seasoned confidence of someone twice his age. Hunger for growth drove him to form Boone Creek in the mid-1970s alongside Vince Gill and Jerry Douglas. They aimed to inject new ideas into bluegrass, layering in rock rhythms and more contemporary chord progressions. Purists gasped, but others praised the bold experimentation. Though the group dissolved, it taught Ricky that bluegrass could adapt. Soon, he was off to join Emmylou Harris's Hot Band, a gig that propelled him into larger venues and introduced him to mainstream country audiences. Under Harris's wing, he realized that the same deft picking that pleased bluegrass fans could captivate new crowds if framed with the right arrangements. His path was diverging from strict traditionalism, but his passion for roots music never dimmed. In 1979, he released Sweet Temptation, a record that merged bluegrass sparkle with country polish. Critics applauded, noting that he hadn't diluted the music's essential charm. This recognition led Epic Records to sign him. Soon, his 1981 album, Waiting for the Sun to Shine, triggered a watershed moment. Singles like Crying My Heart Out Over You soared to the top of the charts, proving that fans still craved fiddles and steel guitars even in an era drifting toward pop-infused country. Ricky became a poster child for a resurgence of neo-traditional sounds. Alongside artists like George Strait and Randy Travis, he reminded Nashville that heartfelt narratives and acoustic textures hadn't lost their power. Yet success often brings new pressures. Label executives and producers discussed how far he might go if he embraced more crossover elements. Whispers circulated about conflict in the studio when he insisted on retaining acoustic solos, but hits kept rolling in and accolades multiplied: Grammys, CMA trophies, and sold-out tours. He symbolized the return of fiddles, banjos, and emotional storytelling to a genre that risked drifting from its roots. The 1980s were kind to him, but the winds would shift again in the following decade, and he would find himself at another crossroads. By the 1990s, Garth Brooks and Shania Twain were bursting onto the scene, launching arena tours that merged country tradition with stadium pop spectacle. Production budgets soared, and radio playlists favored the new wave. The era of massive crossover anthems overshadowed the more rustic approach that Ricky championed. Even established stars felt the shift. Industry insiders suggested that if Ricky wanted to stay relevant, he should blend in. But true to form, he resisted calls to bury his mandolin under synthesizers. Sales declined as the mainstream sound morphed further from its acoustic origins, and airplay grew scarce. Ultimately, he parted ways with Epic, leaving fans to wonder if he was destined for obscurity. That was hardly the case. Freed from major label constraints, Ricky reconnected with his first love, bluegrass. He formed Kentucky Thunder, a band of nimble-fingered virtuosos who attacked traditional tunes with new vigor. In 1997, Bluegrass Rules declared that he had come home. The album won a Grammy and signaled a full-circle moment, rekindling the spark that had smoldered since his earliest days. Critics applauded the record's blazing solos and heartfelt harmonies, praising him for not merely recycling old standards, but delivering them with spirit. Younger audiences, raised on glossier country, discovered the raw thrill of unfiltered acoustic interplay. Ricky Skaggs, once lauded for bridging genres, now ignited a revival in the form that shaped him. Another pillar of his second act was faith. He spoke openly about his Christian beliefs, and subtle spiritual tones filtered into some of his songs. Performing alongside his wife, Sharon White, he found a way to merge heartfelt gospel elements with the rustic flavor of bluegrass. He faced occasional rumors that festival promoters worried his religious stance might polarize certain crowds. Others viewed his openness as admirable, a sign of a man who chose sincerity over calculated marketing. Whatever the speculation, it did little to slow him. The new wave of fans drawn to high-energy picking also recognized authenticity, and Ricky's brand of heartfelt conviction fit the bill. He further widened his horizons through collaborations with unexpected partners. One standout was Bruce Hornsby, the renowned pianist whose fluid, genre-bending style clashed on paper with old-school picking, yet their shows were electric. Hornsby's improvisational flourishes meshed with Ricky's quick-fingered agility, generating excitement among audiences who never thought they'd see a grand piano jam alongside a banjo breakdown. This openness shattered preconceived boundaries, proving again that tradition needn't remain static. He carried that same spirit into other cross-genre adventures, always with an eye toward preserving the essence of bluegrass while giving it new life. Though no longer a fixture on mainstream radio, his star shone just as brightly in the bluegrass and Americana scenes. Kentucky Thunder maintained a relentless touring schedule, wowing listeners with unstoppable riffs and syncopated harmonies. Ricky became a mentor to young players, some of whom grew up idolizing his earliest records. Many found themselves sharing a stage with him, learning firsthand how he balanced innovation with reverence for the past. Critics credited him with fueling an Americana movement that revered acoustic authenticity. Far from fading, he ascended to the role of elder statesman, a guiding voice for anyone seeking to merge respect for tradition with the willingness to explore. A formal acknowledgement arrived in 2018 when he was inducted into the Country Music Hall of Fame. Fans who remembered his epic country hits in the 1980s cheered this official nod to his towering influence. But Ricky never rested on past triumphs. Instead, he continued releasing projects that showcased the undying vibrancy of bluegrass. Live shows featured the same fiery interplay that once shocked Bill Monroe decades before. Each performance felt like a mission statement. This music still mattered, still thrived, and still transcended superficial trends. He reminded everyone that a rooted melody, delivered with passion, connects directly to the human heart. So what truly happened to Ricky Skaggs? He didn't vanish. He simply moved beyond the fleeting glare of mainstream country to cultivate something deeper. He sought to protect the enduring heart of Appalachian music, refusing to let it drown under the wave of pop-driven formulas. Yes, he racked up hits and awards, but in his mind, success meant more than chart positions. When mainstream radio drifted from its acoustic heritage, he seized the chance to reaffirm what had fueled him since childhood. By returning to bluegrass, he rediscovered the creative spark that many fans feared might be lost in the shuffle of corporate demands. Over time, rumors emerged about behind-the-scenes drama, clashes with producers, deals that fell apart, or tensions about creative control. Skaggs rarely addressed these whispers head-on, preferring to let his body of work speak. Observers noticed a consistency in his actions, an unyielding commitment to the style and ideals he learned in the hills of Kentucky. While some contemporaries watered down their sound for mass appeal, Ricky did the opposite. He ramped up the banjos, fiddles, and mandolins, forcing the industry to adapt to him or let him go. His spiritual side also played a strong role. He sometimes performed at gospel-oriented events, reinforcing that his convictions weren't simply for show. He and Sharon White collaborated on tunes that melded old-time picking with faith-based lyricism. Critics might have labeled it niche, but fans found in it an unfiltered sincerity rarely seen in pop-oriented releases. If certain promoters eyed his religious leanings warily, it only underscored his willingness to be himself, free from the typical constraints of show business. Cross-genre collaborations remained a highlight of his musical identity. In addition to Hornsby, he jammed with icons ranging from pop to jazz, each venture displaying how malleable bluegrass can be when interpreted by bold musicians. Bluegrass, once dismissed by some as a relic, found fresh angles under his guidance. He introduced these explorations to fans who'd never given the style much thought, allowing them to see that a mandolin could groove just as hard as an electric guitar. It was a revelation to many, strengthening his reputation as both a guardian of tradition and a creative explorer. By the early 2000s, a new generation of artists emerged, celebrating a rootsy approach that owed much to his example. These young acts, often lumped under Americana, saw Ricky's career as proof that authenticity still resonated, even when mainstream channels turned elsewhere. Some of them cited seeing Kentucky Thunder live as a formative experience, recalling how the speed and precision of the picking left them awestruck. Indeed, the fervor with which Ricky and his band played was infectious, igniting festival crowds and smaller club audiences alike. Meanwhile, older fans who had once known him as a country star rediscovered his new material and recognized a through line. That same respect for melody, clarity of execution, and emotional storytelling remained. They found that the artists championing acoustic purity, people like Alison Krauss, Del McCoury, and Union Station, often spoke about Ricky as an inspiration. He never demanded credit, but his footprint lay across the landscape of modern bluegrass. In a sense, Ricky Skaggs exemplified how an artist can cycle through phases without losing core identity. He went from prodigy to mainstream sensation, then pivoted to revitalizing the music he first fell in love with. Each transition carried its share of risks, but he navigated them with a moral and artistic compass that valued heritage over short-lived success. Even critics who initially doubted his pivot from country stardom had to concede. His vision for a vibrant, living bluegrass tradition was paying off. Those who ask what happened to Ricky Skaggs might be surprised to learn he's still touring relentlessly, still lighting up stages and still driving home the power of a well-picked melody. The radio might not highlight him as it once did, but that hardly matters. He's reached a status where it's about more than chart positions. It's about forging meaningful connections through music that resonates across generations. At shows, one sees older couples swaying in nostalgic unity and wide-eyed teens marveling at the impossibly rapid banjo lines. Somewhere in the crowd stands a future musician, just like Ricky once was, feeling that electric spark for the first time. Music historians will undoubtedly list him as a key figure in both country and bluegrass. His string of hits in the 1980s shaped modern country, while his later devotion to bluegrass laid a foundation for a resurgence. He's one of those rare artists who can claim membership in two different, though overlapping, pantheons. The Country Music Hall of Fame recognized him as a torchbearer who never forgot his roots. Bluegrass purists hail him as a hero who guided the genre to new heights. Straddling these worlds, He's an illustration of how a musician can flourish on multiple paths if guided by genuine dedication. Controversies and rumors aside, the primary narrative is that of a man who matured from child prodigy into an ambassador for the music that shaped him. He tasted mainstream stardom, then voluntarily stepped away to keep his artistic soul intact. In a cutthroat industry, that choice stands out. Too many artists watch their creativity erode under the demands of record executives, not Ricky Skaggs. At every turn, he listened to the echoes of the Appalachian ridges that first inspired him, certain that no fleeting pop trend could match the timeless pull of a fiddle crying in harmony with a mandolin. Ultimately, that's the essence of his story, staying faithful to the music and letting it lead him no matter what. He's never scolded the mainstream for shifting. He simply opted out when he believed it no longer fit his vision. The result is a legacy that stretches beyond old country hits into the living tapestry of acoustic American sound. Sit in on a Kentucky Thunder show today, and you'll see him unleashing the same fire that once astonished Bill Monroe. The audience roars, not just for the notes, but for the truth they carry. That real music, forged in sincerity and tradition, can still lift the spirit in ways no passing fad can replicate. Legends don't fade, they adapt. They dig deeper into the heart of their artistry, forging connections that endure longer than any ephemeral wave of popularity. Ricky Skaggs demonstrates this at every show, in every interview, and with every blistering pick run that leaves listeners breathless. The radio might have moved on, but the soul of country and bluegrass lives on in his playing, a gift that welcomes all who care to hear it. In a world that often values the new over the true, he stands tall as a testimony that one can transcend the moment by holding fast to a deeper sense of purpose. That's what truly happened to Ricky Skaggs, and that's why he still matters today. Through the years, there have also been whispers about alleged rifts with certain influential figures who felt threatened by his unwillingness to bend. One rumor claimed that after a particularly tense studio session, Skaggs was told outright that he could triple his earnings if he embraced a more mainstream direction. Instead of wavering, he politely declined, quipping that no amount of money could silence the mandolin he had loved since childhood. Although never confirmed, stories like these underscore the tightrope he walked. The larger Nashville machine often demanded slicker sounds and a willingness to sacrifice tradition in pursuit of crossover glory. Ricky, however, seemed immune to that pressure, preferring to let the music speak for itself, even if it meant losing the ear of certain executives. Friends have described him as soft-spoken yet firm, gracious with collaborators but unwavering in his core principles. Over time, that steadfast resolve earned him respect far beyond the confines of country radio. Songwriters lauded him for showcasing the raw storytelling that sits at the heart of Appalachian music, while session players admired his ability to execute lightning-fast runs without forsaking lyrical phrasing. His tours featured workshops and impromptu jam sessions where novices felt welcomed, and seasoned pickers found themselves inspired by his undiminished passion. In those settings, rumors of industry friction seemed distant, overshadowed by a sense that he was protecting a torch lit decades ago, one he hoped to pass on. For many younger artists, he became a role model, a proof point that you could thrive on your own terms, leaning into the gritty authenticity that drew you to music in the first place. Even as he approached new ventures with open arms, collaborating with pop or rock musicians whenever a spark of creativity arose, he always returned to the comfort of a fiddle lick or a banjo roll. It wasn't an act of defiance as much as a recentering. By remaining rooted in the traditions that first dazzled him as a boy, Ricky Skaggs managed a rare feat, standing firm in a rapidly evolving market without turning bitter or complacent. He simply pressed forward, guided by the same mandolin strings that once captivated his imagination under the Kentucky sky. If you enjoyed this video, like and subscribe, and also click the next video shown on your screen.